Okay, I'll play the theme just in case it works.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
You're in violation of secure communication procedures, Commodore.
So we just went ahead and fixed the glitch.
There is no America. There is no democracy.
Our fifth objective, a new world order.
There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no
Vast
West.
right-wing conspiracy.
What do you call it when the assassins accuse the assassin?
A new world order.
Thank you for plugging in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
Well, just a second there, Professor. We fixed the glitch.
I'm your host, Professor Thomas Henry Horan.
He reads everything.
Oh, you better bet your bippies he reads everything. Hello there, you lucky devils. You are plugged in live to an impromptu pop-up live stream of the Stones Unturned, of the Professor Thomas Henry Horan on the Stones Unturned podcast. So, I was testing something earlier. I hope that didn't annoy people too much. I creepy crawl. Checking out how things work. About how to stream to the members only section. I just wanted to check and make sure I had all that set up correctly. I didn't, but now I do. So, you do not have to subscribe to the YouTube members only. On YouTube, you subscribe for free. You get all alerts, things like that. You join, and there's a paid membership level, $9.99 a month. I'll do the premium live streams. I will do them not to both YouTube channels, not yet. That other one's not monetized yet. So the old YouTube channel you're familiar with. When I do a premium live stream, I will do one on the YouTube channel. Now, if that gets 86'd by SpewTube, I take no responsibility. There will be no refunds unless you can get one from SpewTube. But I think I've got it figured out how to not annoy it unnecessarily. I don't break any laws. I don't dox people, blah, 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 blah. It is complicated to subscribe to the premium website. It is complicated to get your notification. I still have to pregame on YouTube to let people know I'm going live. And it's a pain in my patusis, for sure. So, if people want to try it, and I'm not tearing down the premium website. If you've already got a subscription and you're happy with it, keep it. But hi, John. Forget OnlyFans, FanView. I don't think anybody's still working at FanView. I think it's a zombie website. And forget paying subscription on Twitter. That'll be a last resort. I've got my Twitter numbers fluctuate wildly every day. So I can live stream to Twitter. That's no problem. But don't pay for a subscription there. So your two choices really, your two choices really are the premium website, where you also get access to all kinds of goodies, and there are more coming all the time. And when you watch reruns, there's search inside the video. I don't know if people are using that. I use it, and it's great, but you won't. But I'll still upload premium episodes to the paid YouTube membership section. If you see a join button, click it. You can join. That's up to you. I like YouTube because, for one thing, people can tip me. It's easy for people to tip me. They like to tip me, and I like to be tipped. So you don't have to. But that way, it would be easier for all of us. It's just that a couple of years ago when I kept getting... So that's up to you guys. I get the same profit either way, so don't worry about that. But if I can do this on them, because I'm going to start turning more towards current events, not just politics. It's not going to be all Trump all the time. This isn't CNN. I will make it a lot more obvious when I'm going to be talking politics and current events, and when I'm going to be talking true crime, okay? So this just makes it easier. Even just pre-gaming is easier. because I don't think you even get alerts. What I was hoping I could do was, and I might play with it more tomorrow, one more time, I can create a members-only live stream on YouTube so you guys know there's one coming up, and then I can switch it to members only before the live stream begins, not to jerk the rug out from under you, but you'll at least know I'm doing another members only live stream, and you'll know if you want to subscribe or not, if you want to join the paid subscription or not. By all means, subscribe to this channel. That's free. But if you join, it's $9.99 a month. So I'm playing with that to see how the alerts actually go out and things like that. So I can also do public live streams, but the chat is members only. I can do things like that. So, let's just talk about the news real quick. Remember yesterday when everybody and their dog was saying, oh, the Epstein names drop, it's nothing, blah, blah, it's a non-story, blah, 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 blah. Well, today was a fish of a different feather. This is why I don't friend people on Facebook. I do not consider Facebook to be social media. It's where I dump links like this so I won't lose them. If you message me anytime in the last 6 months, I probably haven't gotten back to you. There are a couple of people I message on Facebook. That's it. Don't get your little feelings hurt. Right. These are people who are saying Epstein handed me $200 for every girl I dropped off. He handed me $200 for every girl that I walked in that door, whether they did stuff with him or not. Epstein even phoned him directly to ask about getting more girls. Figueroa became involved in Epstein's scheme to procure young girls because he was dating accuser Virginia Roberts Giuffre at the time, according to the file. It's funny that the only accusers that really came forward were accomplices. I hate to bang this drum every day, but I'm going to anyway. Don't fall for the self-pity. I'm not saying these girls weren't taken advantage of. I'm saying they became accomplices, and some of them pretty willingly. The farmer broad, the artist, she was, even allowing, it's just, she was an accomplice. And speaking of which, I want to talk about another documentary here in a minute. Right, Virginia Giuffre, this is kind of similar. I mean, her boyfriend is also procuring for Epstein. This isn't a victim situation. This is an honor among thieves situation. They're the only ones who've come forward, but to a great extent. That's called the best defense is good offense. The first one to turn rat is the one who is first in line to make a deal. David Copperfield asking one of the girls if they were aware girls were bringing other girls in. It doesn't make any of it right, but it's not the same thing as snatching children off the street in a black van. I can understand why those victims don't want to come forward. Who would? But some of these broads had some ambitions of becoming models and famous artists. And it doesn't make it right. Do you guys know who Cat Williams is? When I say stand up, I mean he's 4'2", but the other little tiny black comedian, not Kevin Hart, who's funny as hell. Cat Williams, funny as hell. Cat Williams, remember Bobcat Goldthwait was talking about Bill Cosby 35 years ago. Don't forget that. Don't forget that Corey Feldman was talking about Weinstein and all those other people 30 years ago. 20, at least it's been over 20 years, right? Where are the apologies from the media to those people? Look at what the media did to those people. Look at what they did to Dave Chappelle. Yeah, right. The vanity, the ambition. And if you're a total sociopath like Epstein and you know that's how the business tends to work, Madonna talked about it. Madonna said, she was dating that one producer, and very early on, she was a drummer in a punk rock band and learning how to dance. And he said, if you find a bigger dick, fuck it. So she did. She and there was another one of her boyfriends, like they were just using each other, and they knew they were using each other. They knew that. So to somebody like Epstein or Richard Nixon, that's how the whole business always works. It's not always like that. I didn't do that. I'm not saying I didn't have a good time. I'm saying it wasn't one of these, you take your clothes off or you don't get, that never happened. What I'm saying is, this is how a really good con artist works. Everybody thinks they're getting something for nothing. Everybody thinks they're getting something out of this. So some of this stuff where he's just hiring, it's almost like, because he's not the brains of the outfit. First it's Eva, then it's Jelaine. They're the brains. They're the Hillary of the pair. And then when they're through with Jeffrey, he's becoming more of a liability than an asset, and he's outlived his usefulness. They just let him set himself up to get busted for some, I hate to say it, Penny Annie call girl operate in Palm Beach. These teenage girls going there and getting their $200 to give him a massage. You're asking to get arrested, and it just seems like he can't keep himself out of trouble for 5 minutes. It's only the broads who control him, keep him out of trouble, and then when he's not really that useful anymore, they just let him self-destruct. Because he's real stupid. I mean, he's very bright with math and things like that, and he has no conscience, but he's the typical sociopath. He's stupid. He's your typical stupid sociopath who can't stay out of trouble for 5 minutes. He can't even pretend to go straight. But if somebody can control him, he can be very useful because the rest of that brain. So he's real stupid early on in his career. Then he meets Lex Luthor, and who introduces him to Eva, and then they introduce him to Jelaine. So during that period of time, he's as smart as James Bond, Dr. No, any of these guys. Then after his first arrest in particular, and then when computers can be programmed to do what his brain was so useful for, and when laws have gotten changed to make it so much easier to do what they're doing on a massive scale, they don't really need him anymore. It's right about that time he turned stupid again. And now he's dead. Hi, Shane. Ask Cheese Bro. He got a deal singing like a bird. Well, you mean Epstein's brother? Epstein was not the most important member of the cell. He was useful. He was very useful for a long time. Then he outlived. So I think they just let him run up. Just let him self-destruct. Wind down. They don't need him anymore. The Georgia Trump case? Are you talking about Donald Trump's Georgia election fraud allegations, or are you talking about some woman named Georgia Trump? How was what? Okay, it's like what? The Jeffrey Epstein case is like the Trump case in Georgia? In what way? But watch Cat Williams. He's blowing a lot of whistles. He's blowing a whistle on Kanye. He's blowing a whistle on Diddy. He's blowing a whistle on... See, these kind of public pictures, that's not real. And Trump has always, give him credit, he's always admitted he knew him. Funny thing is, Trump was cleared of any wrongdoing in his associations with Epstein, but he gets the shaft. And Clinton, 50 times, 20, whatever, no investigation. Warrants were served on Lolita Island. Tons of evidence was seized. 0 arrests made. 0. Snitches getting deals. Kenneth Cheesebro. Snitches getting deals. Oh, yeah. Florida State University Police Department. Deb Cheesebro, PhD. That's not the person. See, that's the kind of thing SpewTube frowns on. Oh, I didn't type in the first name. Hi, John. How you been? John Ryan in the house. John Stewart and John Ryan. Kenneth Cheesebro. Hey, it's not my fault that broad was the first search result. Architect of the Trump fake electors plot that conspired to overturn the 2020 U.S. presidential election. The problem with this whole case, though, is that there's no link to Trump, right? I mean, I'm not saying that there's nothing to see here. What I'm saying is I haven't seen anything. Yeah, he clerked for Gerhard Gessel. He was a registered Democrat until 2016. Well, Trump said, I know the system's rigged because I was one of the people who helped rig it. Yeah, Cheesebro's the guy who they were going to send phony electors, but there's never been to use the Biden defense, there's no evidence of any kind that Trump had anything to do with them doing it. They were just doing it. Now, I'm not saying they're totally innocent. Right, yeah, right. A couple of defendants and everybody else is a snitch. Speaking of which, if you're going to pay for Hulu, watch that new documentary I told you about, Daughters of the Cult, about the LeBaron Chenault cult family, Mormon clan of FLDS polygamists, child bride cult. Responsible. They make the Manson family look like the Care Bears. But my point is, I think that's where they get the idea. When you see the Manson family, the Zodiac thing, the Death Angels, you're seeing very specifically different. They're similar, but different experiments into what works and what does not work. If you don't want to pay for it, I'll show you a couple of clips. Then there's another one called Have You Seen This Man? About John Rufo. The guy who defrauded those investment banks out of supposedly close to $400 million, which I all got back. No spoilers. It's a fun documentary. Nobody dies. I don't think anybody dies. As far as the details of the case and his relationship to the FBI and the KGB and the Mafia are concerned, two things. Notice the timeline of events in that movie compared to the timeline of events in the Epstein movie. Number two, his wife, his loyal, devoted wife is his accomplice, even though the documentary filmmakers try real hard to make her look like one of the victims. She is an accomplice, and you will notice, if you watch carefully, in a documentary where they try to portray her as sympathetically as they can, for whatever motives, she cries exactly one tear in this entire documentary, and I want you to pay attention who she cries that tear for. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. A sociopath married a sociopath. Don't be fooled. Pay very careful attention to what she did to her own family and tried to blame it on her husband, who may not have been the mastermind, but he didn't do anything to her family. She did it all to her family. I want you to pay attention to who she feels sorry for in that documentary. Otherwise, hi, JJ. They never found Rufo, well, supposedly. The funny thing is, it's not entirely out of the question that he ended up living on Lolita Island. Watch that documentary and keep track of the timeline. There's more to it than what they show you in the documentary. There always is. And it's all these women. You got to understand, he had one guy working under him, and the rest were women who were doing all these shady things. And they explain why. Rufo was the one who wrote one of these autobiographies, like Gaston Bullock Means did. Like, he's another one. He left behind a diary that's written. It's well written. It's a well-written thriller. And 90% of the case against him when he got convicted was his snitch. Hi, Sticky Marks. Happy Orthodox Christmas. Thank you very much. The Germans also open their Christmas presents now. Not the Germans. The other fascists, the Italians. Right? This is Italian Day for opening presents. But instead of it's not St. Nicholas who comes down the chimney, it's some broad who comes down the chimney, right? On a witch's broom and drops off candy and presents for the children. In America, I think they just celebrate American Christmas, but Bernardo? Which Bernardo? Oh, listen. I ended up specializing in women con artists. I have a PhD in the deceitful wiles of women. Men very rarely get away with playing the victim. Women always get away with playing the victim. Always. And every sociopath, they're not evil. They don't have any morals at all. They just figure out what works. She was stunningly beautiful as a younger woman. Perfectly symmetrical facial features. This one takes the cake. Bernardo. Well, what's the first name? I won't blame you. Well, I will blame you people, but I need the first name. What happened to... What happened to, There was one person... Hi, Ivana. Well, there's Paula Homolka, right? And there's, Is that it? Is that the case you're talking about? And speaking of... That's Carla Homolka. Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. Oh. The Ken and Barbie killers. He might have been the victim. Who were the British couple? They audio taped, torturing those boys and dumping them. I think it was all boys, or was it boys and girls? And dumped them in not the fens, dumped them in the moors. It's like a wasteland. I think that was more her than him. West, Rose and Fred West. I hope I'm not. Maybe I should Google things before I just put names out there. Yeah, Fred and Rose West, right? I think she was more the mastermind. Where were we? Epstein, let's see. All these women teachers abusing their students? Oh, yeah. This young lady did become a top model. Ruslana Gorsunova, who featured in ads for Marc Jacobs, Donna Karan, Vera Wang, and Nina Ricci, was just 18 when she was a passenger on the since-deceased pedophile so-called Lolita Express. On June 7, 2006, the trip to Little St. James was almost exactly 2 years before she leaped to her death from her 9th-floor balcony. This is another one of these suicides. It's hard to prove somebody wasn't pushed over a ledge if nobody saw it. Okay, Sticky Marks. No, what I'm saying about Rose and Fred West is I'm pretty sure Rose was the mastermind. Yeah, she was gorgeous. And every single one of these, it always starts out with Jelaine. It's Jelaine, and then they're introduced to Jeffrey. Elderly Georgia man burns 75% of his body trying to open a bag of chips with a lighter. There's nothing funny about that at all. Epstein personally went to Vanity Fair to suppress the truth, not Bill Clinton. Graydon Carter. Here's the thing. We're journalists, we speak truth to power, but you cave in one time. Why would anybody buy your rag after that? Carter says it wasn't. You see, we have to take his word for this. He's an accomplice. Graydon Carter is an accomplice. By suppressing the story, that makes him an accomplice. I don't care what his excuse is. He's a publisher of, Vanity Fair, editor-in-chief. I don't care what your excuse is. You're an accomplice. So we're taking his word for it, that it wasn't Bill. It didn't sound terribly believable that Bill Clinton would show up at his office. Bill Clinton can express his displeasure through more circumspect means. Vanity Fair also abandoned reporting on Epstein in 2007. Carter's family found a severed cat's head on the porch of their country home in Connecticut. Says who? Says Graydon Carter. That doesn't sound like the kind of thing that Bill Clinton would... That sounds like something that the Simpsons version of Bill Clinton would do. What else? Go back to my fake book. Brady and Henley? Myra Henley and Eden Brady. Yeah, those two. Those two. They're the ones who recorded it, right? This one was interesting, but you may not think it was interesting. Let me see.
If you come into my pharmacy, if your grandma comes in,
listen,
and she tries to fill a prescription, I'll give you metformin. My cost on metformin is roughly $2. I would sell her metformin for $4. As soon as she discloses that she has insurance, I have a gag clause. I am not allowed to tell her my cash pay price. I swipe her insurance card, Blue Cross, whatever it may be, boom, copay $10. And she gets her medicine, I charge her $10. Immediately when I swipe that card and I enter all that in the computer, I get a $7 clawback. Where does it go? It goes to the PBM. So you give it, like, I could have saved her $6, but I can't disclose to her that. And now the money, the profits, I make less money, she pays more money, and the money goes back to the big insurance companies.
Yeah. Did you know that? Trump banned Jeffrey Epstein from Mar-a-Lago in 1999. Is this true?
With a new book that reveals the Mar-a-Lago owner actually kicked out South Florida financier Jeffrey Epstein. The incident allegedly took place at Mar-a-Lago back in 1999. One chapter in the book, Filthy Rich, details how Epstein was
James
a regular
Patterson
at the club, but that all ended when
that wasn't in the documentary, Filthy Rich.
A member's young daughter complained to her wealthy father. While relaxing at Mar-a-Lago, she had been approached and invited out to Epstein's house. The girl said that she had gone and that Epstein had tried to get her to undress. The girl's father had gone directly to Trump, who, in no uncertain terms, told Epstein that he was barred from Mar-a-Lago. That's all in Chapter 33 of the book. Epstein...
Never heard that story. I wonder why. It might be true. Some of these documents, their name comes up, but it's not in much of a context. It's Bill Clinton flew there 26 times that we know of, blah, 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 blah. I guess this is true. Illegal, unlicensed Chinese biolabs in the United States.
The House Select Subcommittee on China that you're a part of says it found pathogens labeled HIV and Ebola inside a secret, illegal Chinese-owned biolab in California. Here's an important moment from the hearing you took part in earlier this week. Watch.
How many of these labs exist throughout the country? We don't know that. There could be more Reedley, Californias around the country.
Every elected official in this country should be concerned about whether an illicit lab with dangerous infectious substances could be hiding in their community.
It has been almost a year since the discovery of the illegal lab, and we are still working to remove the chemicals and illegal medicine.
Yeah, that was interesting. Terry Crews.
A party with my wife, I was sexually assaulted by a successful Hollywood agent. The assault lasted only minutes, but what he was effectively telling me while he held my genitals in his hand was that he held the power.
Yeah, this is, I'm becoming interested in this. See, I don't watch TV. I never listen to any speeches made by politicians.
Why has Barack Obama mistaken Michelle's name for Michael so many times?
Most of all, Admiral Mullen, Deborah. Michael and I also want to acknowledge your son Jack, who's deployed today.
You know what my kids asked me? They said, you've got to ask the president, does anything scare him?
You know, well, when Michelle's mad.
Why is it that Michelle Obama can't remember the day that her and Barack got married?
How long have you been with Barack Obama?
We been married? 20-something years. Wait, somebody, you guys know the date?
I'm getting a little bit interested in that. This, here we go. Here we go. Archie at his finest. This is...
And then we got the telephone here, AT&T, American Thieves and Thugs.
He wasn't joking. Here's another one. TSA director. Listen to this story. Maxine McManaman, Assistant Federal Security Director at the Transportation Safety Administration. Assistant Federal Security Director arrested. A warrant issued by the St. Lucie County, Florida Sheriff's Office, which claimed that she and an alleged accomplice named Delroy Chambers Sr. exploited a relative suffering from dementia by falsifying documents in their name and ripping off the government. Deputy Director of Security at the TSA. Crooked as hell. Ripping off, not just ripping off Uncle Sucker. Okay, here we go. Here's another statement from these. Epstein trafficked a teenage girl to prominent U.S. politicians, world leaders, and even a well-known prime minister, and then made her detail the sexual encounter so that he could potentially blackmail the men, according to new unsealed court documents. The accuser, Jane Doe 3, was forced to have sex with a host of powerful men. That list included numerous prominent American politicians. See, I think part of the reason for bringing out the Virginia Giuffres, bringing out the Paula Joneses, bringing out the Maria Farmers, is they were willing to be, they're kind of like Amanda Knox. If I can just get on TV, they're willing to go on TV. So the accusations, they're not that. I mean, yeah, first of all, sure, it's sexual harassment to do what you did. It is technically sexual assault. At no point, I mean, even in her own story, when Maria's accusing Jelaine and Jeffrey, there's no point where she ever tells them to stop. She never said she told them she didn't like it. She said she's, dissociated, and I believe her. But I think the reason that you see them is because it minimizes and distracts. Whereas the real victims, they're trying to protect their identities, and it would be very difficult for them to come forward. We see what happens to victims who come forward. Look what happened to Monica Lewinsky. It covers up the fact, and here's what I love. What I love is people like Barbara Walters, Katie Couric. Oh, I just find it so hard to believe that Bill Clinton would do a thing like that. You've been shown for an absolute fact that he was getting jobs in the men's room of the Oval Office from teenaged unpaid student interns. This was happening in the men's room of the Oval Office in the White House. What do you mean it's hard to believe? Well, I just can't believe he ever did anything else like that. Well, you know about Barack's mother, right? We're going to talk about her real soon. Approached by Ghislaine Maxwell in 1999. Was it approached by Jeffrey Epstein? Approached by Ghislaine Maxwell. Charlie, I know you thought you were the king of pimps. Compared to Ghislaine Maxwell, you were Mother Teresa. Over the next 3 years, turned her into a sex slave, making her available for sex to politically connected and financially powerful people. Not just men, people. Everybody always assumes it's men. Everybody just assumes there's such a thing as reverse sexism. She was one of the ones her lawyers complained that there was a plea deal entered without checking with the victim. Plea deals have to be accepted by the victim, and this one wasn't. It's just so obvious. It's laughably obvious. And yet, you have these otherwise intelligent, oh my God, I'm a journalist people who are, but there's no proof. Why do they stick up for him? And this was all testimony in support of Giuffre's lawsuit. Here's something funny. Remember the Rochester, New York suicide bomber? Remember the Kodak Park suicide bomber? Kodak Park, where they used to build spy satellites? Remember that suicide bomber? New Year's Eve reveler found dead after going missing from upstate New York bar. Upstate as in Rochester, New York. Jennifer Hicks of Pittsford, New York, was last seen at about 2:30 a.m. at Ziggy's Bar on Railroad Street in Rochester. Ziggy's Bar, Rochester, New York. Not that it's close to Kodak Park. Ziggy's Bar. That's quite a coincidence. I'm not picking on Ziggy's Bar. I just want to see where it is in the context of Rochester, New York. It's not a big town. And then Kodak Park. From Ziggy's to Kodak Park. Remember The early days of chemistry, it was still alchemy. That includes photography. Think about what a magical process photography is. It is photography. It is writing with light. What a magical process. And Kodak, of course. So Kodak Park is on the northwest side of town. It's 5 miles. That's how small a town Rochester is. Rochester is where Kenneth Bianchi was from. And his dad worked at the place that developed the exotic high-temperature, non-magnetic metal alloys for nuclear submarines. They were being repaired by Darlene Ferrin's dad. Remember all that and more? Wait a minute. Her body was discovered Tuesday. Did not appear to be any signs of foul play. Well, if you don't look for any, you won't find any. Dead on an embankment, like the Hillside Strangler. But she wasn't strangled? She was an ambulance crewman. Huh. And she seemed to be a fairly lonely person? Skeel Street and Portland Avenue. Rochester, New York. I doubt if that's Skeel Street. There's Portland Avenue. Where's Skeel Street? Where does that meet? It doesn't meet. Here's Portland Avenue. Here's Skeo Street. They don't intersect. The intersection of 1st and 2nd Streets. Doesn't look like it's, well, it's a little bit closer to Kodak Park. Bill wasn't impotent. Bill's penis is deformed. That's why he can't be the father of Chelsea Clinton. He can't actually have regular, normal, if I may use that word, intercourse with his wife. Camera obscura. Yeah, you can build one yourself. Which, I don't know if there's a connection. There's a weird death of this woman right after there was this weird suicide bomber at Kodak Park in Rochester, New York. Speed racer actor Christian Oliver, 2 young daughters killed in Caribbean plane crash. Where were they going exactly? Christian Oliver and his 2 young daughters were killed. Where was their mother? Was with daughters when they died alongside their pilot, Robert Sachs. They're being flown from Bequia to nearby St. Lucia when their single-engine plane experienced difficulties and plummeted into the ocean, the Royal St. Vincent and Grenadines police said. Sachs owned the plane, radioed the control tower to report problems, and is planning to return. Oh, there's video of it. Well, that was lucky. All 4 pronounced dead on the spot. This was the plane. Born in Germany. Where was their mother? What island is this? Bequia. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. St. Vincent and the Grenadines are supposedly flying to Santa Lucia, which is just south of Martinique. All part of the Golden Circle. This is the Golden Circle. Remember Grenada? Remember the invasion of Grenada? Remember America's big comeback? It's been all, you have to admit. Huh. So they could have been flying from here to Little St. James. Directions to Little St. James Island. $16 hours? How many miles is that? That's a long way. 16 hours and 50 minutes from $2,600 on Google Flights. I don't think they're not flying straight there, right? How many miles is it? There's a little tool on here to measure miles. I've used it before. Where the hell is it? It's measure. Measure distance from here. No. Measure distance from here to here. 300 miles. No. Wait, what? Is it 300 miles or 100 miles? $400 miles. It looks like it's 400 miles. They could make it. I don't know is it still open for business? Huh. Kobe's family's wiped out in a crash. The sky is for the birds. If God had intended us to fly, he would have given us wings. You wouldn't catch me dead on another goddamn airplane. I like flying, but New York Supreme Court judge, don't be fooled by these grandiose titles. The New York, New Jersey court system was raided by investigators, found dead. John Michalski, an acting justice on the Erie County, this is Buffalo, appeared to have died by suicide. He was entangled in a wider investigation. John Michalski last spoke for a meeting lasted several hours. The Supreme Court, highest trial court. Each county, it's like Superior Court in every civilized state in the Union, it's called Superior Court. Stepped into the path of a slow-moving tanker train. He was hospitalized. Oh, wait a minute. There was a first suicide attempt in February 2021. His apparent suicide attempt last year came on the same day that a former client and family friend, Peter Garassi Jr., was arrested by federal agents in Florida. Garassi, the owner of a strip club near Buffalo and the nephew of alleged Buffalo mob boss, was indicted on charges related to drug and sex trafficking and bribery of a former Drug Enforcement Administration agent to protect them from federal narcotics investigations. No charges have been filed against the judge, but they asked him Michalski had been under investigation by the State Commission on Judicial Conduct in connection with how much he was paid for performing Garassi's wedding. Ross, this isn't one of your relatives, is it? There's a gentleman's agreement. I know what you're thinking. Well, why are you going after Manny's dad? I said it's a gentleman's agreement. Look, there was nothing. What's wrong with performing a wedding? But give him $5,000 for a $50 job. Now all of a sudden you're tarred. Got that stain on you. Suicide. Second attempt. Prosecutor on Jack Smith's team discouraged FBI from investigating the Clinton Foundation in 2016. Ray Hulser, the former chief of the DOJ's Public Integrity Section, was identified as the official who declined prosecution of the Clinton Foundation in Special Counsel John Durham's report. Industry likely engaged a federal public official in a flow of benefits scheme, namely, large monetary contributions were made to a nonprofit under both direct and indirect control of the federal public official in exchange for favorable government action or influence. How do you get the money out of the foundation? Click the link, one of the links in the description of this video. One killed, five injured in shooting at Iowa High School. Perry, Iowa. He wasn't shooting his high school classmates. This happened at the shooting was at Idaho High School. The only dead student was a 6th grader. What was he doing there? And the principal was shot. I don't know if that's connected to anything. Except, unless it's somehow connected, should I mention it? Mark Middleton's suicide in Perryville, Arkansas. I don't know what a school shooting in Perry, Iowa would accomplish. Prince Andrew accused of having underage orgy on Jeffrey Epstein's private island. What do you get, though? Blackmailing the Queen or the King, they have a lot of pull in the Commonwealth. I don't know what you get for blackmailing the Duke of Windsor. He's the Duke of Windsor? He's a Duke of something. Yeah, I'm not going to replay the Cat Williams tapes, but he comes, he's very serious on these interview programs. Karine Jean-Pierre, spokesperson, not a token hire. It's just this person who checks every box on the diversity and inclusion checklist. It just so happens she just happens to be the best qualified person for the job, like the president of Harvard. She was not a token hire. She was the best person who applied to be president of Harvard. Razor wire along the border does not prevent non-citizens from unlawfully crossing. It puts the lives of the Border Patrol at risk. She actually says this. I am going to play this for you. This is not words that have been placed in her mouth.
Dealing with the issue as the administration's also fighting to keep up, to remove razor wire along the border that is intended to keep, this surge lowered, to keep people out from crossing illegally.
Governor Abbott's razor wire does not prevent. It does not prevent non-citizens from unlawfully crossing. That's not what it does. If anything, it puts at risk, it puts the lives of the Border Patrol at risk. It puts them in danger. That's what the razor wire does.
Dealing with the issue as the administration's also fighting to keep up, to remove razor wire along the border that is intended to keep,
You don't think the plane could go that far? Supposedly a big draw to Lolita Island was he built a full airport with fueling facilities and things like that, so rich and powerful assholes could refuel their planes conveniently. So maybe, I don't know. I don't want to know anything about airplanes. Yeah, a little airplane like that, I don't know. And with all those people in it, I honestly don't know. Yeah, I don't know. The Secret Service totally screwed up. Obama's chef drowned recently in the Caribbean, remember? The Secret Service screwed up that rescue effort. Yeah, and that's back to, okay. Well, it's Friday night. I won't keep you all night. I mean, that makes sense. World War II fighter planes only carried about 45 minutes worth of fuel. The P-50, it was a huge breakthrough, the P-51, in carrying drop tanks. The heavier a plane is, the harder it is to get it off the ground. And the much higher the stall speed is. And it just, okay, I understand that. So that makes sense. It might not be safe to carry that much more fuel. Because basically, the Spirit of St. Louis was just a flying gas tank that barely got off the ground. Yeah, planes are so expensive to maintain, right? It used to be cheap. When I was in high school, you could get your pilot's license for between $150 and $300. Just getting a little small private pilot's license is like 15 grand because you have to pay for the time in the airplane. You don't think a single engine plane, so you don't think they were, I'm not seriously suggesting they were trying to fly to the Lolita Island. That woman, see, I don't like to talk about, you can't feel sorry for people. Think about what their mother, the wife and mother. What a nightmare. And she's too old to have any more children. She wasn't along on the flight for whatever reason. How hard is it to sabotage a small plane? You know, I don't want to think about what she's going through. I don't. You'd rather see the whole family get wiped out than to leave a parent behind who... He could have at least... He's only 51. He could have had another family, like Dr. Ota did. You know Dr. Ota's... That was not the first time Dr. Ota's entire family had been wiped out. You know that, right? He starts another family, but she's finished. You're bringing up the fact no recreational two-engine planes. Well, if you think it's expensive to own a horse, try owning a multi-engine airplane. Now, David Lee Huber was a licensed commercial multi-engine pilot. That's the thing about Jimmy Stewart. Flying a two-engine plane is like 10 times as complicated, right? Flying a four-engine plane is like 50 to 100 times as complicated. And back in those days when there's nothing automatic, there's no electronics. Flying a four-engine bomber. Jimmy Stewart was already a licensed pilot of big four-engine airliners and things like this. He recruited and trained an entire squadron or wing or whatever of B-24, the long-range bombers, and led them on 25 missions over Nazi Europe. I guess one day a piece of shrapnel came up and went right between his legs and went up through the top of the... He said he could feel on his tip of his nose. Is that enough horror for one Friday night? I did not bring a bottle of water. Oh, I've got to check. Let me check the news. And they're longer range, right? A lot of people thought that Colonel Lindbergh was crazy for trying to... He was the one who flew across the Atlantic in a single-engine plane, right? Yeah, I know aerodynamics are complicated. I know this. It's a race against time. It's a question of how high you can get, and I know all that stuff is complicated. Like in the movies, a dogfight happens like it does in a computer game. In real life, you're diving after somebody. There are layers in the atmosphere, and you hit a new layer, and depending on the aerodynamic properties of your plane and how you're flying it, I talked to an old World War II fighter pilot. Yeah, I think I don't know if he was an ace, But he talked about in Korea, I think he flew jets. You hit that, and like if you know this, you get this guy to chase you down to a certain altitude. His plane's going to skip off that boundary layer worse than yours does. So now he bounces up in front of you. Now you're behind him. Now you can take him out. I know he was old and he real dog fighting. There were no guided missiles. Real dog fighting. He said it was like. He said you get, and he had a lot of experience. He'd lived a long time. He'd survived a lot, and he said it's real quick. Rookies get killed real quick. Experienced fighter pilots can smell a rookie 100 miles off. And they're the ones they go after. They don't go after each other. They go after the rookies. So he said if you live through your first, like you can be up, there can be a thing going on and you just don't contact any enemy planes. If you survive your first aerial combat, you're already like a veteran. He said it wasn't about the machine. Like, what was the best German plane or whatever? He said it wasn't about the machine. There were a couple of things you understood, like the altitude mattered, climb rate mattered. But once you got, he said you didn't think about the machine anymore. You thought about that other pilot physically. What's his stick hand doing? What's his throttle hand doing? What's he doing with this? He's got his feet on the rudder pedals. You're in this turn. He's slammed up against this just like you are. He said it's all about you're doing pretty much the same thing he is. So if he said and you're not thinking about it anymore. And I said, "Oh, you mean like dancing?" He said, "No. This is life or death. It's more like sex." He said it was more about feeling what that other pilot was doing. I don't think he blinked once in a 3-hour conversation. Like, he had eyes like a hawk. He was an old man. But yeah, he was telling me all these things, fly into clouds and all these crazy things happen. You've got this German pilot has run out of bullets and he's running for home. And you got him in your sights and your gun jams. Your gun's jam or whatever. You're out of bullets, whatever. You've only got like 20 seconds. Like in the movies, it's rat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat-a-tat for an hour. No, you have, you're out. So he, and just flew past the guy and just looked at him, And the guy was just scared to death. Like sometimes you came face to face. Yeah, he said you didn't think about the machine. That was like before, and okay, I need to be at 10,000 feet or whatever. After that, once it was mano a mano. That was a long, and then he got one of the new P-51s that could fly all the way to Berlin and back. That was a long flight in a machine that has no autopilot. And it's not designed. It's not a Piper Cub that just floats along. You got to fly that plane. And you got to be doing Morse code at the same time. Like the squadron leader had a voice transmitter like that. And later on, they got more radios. They got super sideband radios. Or there's a really good documentary, Doodlebug Summer, about the V-1 attacks on Britain. And, or maybe it was Lady Air Traffic Controller, British, the Royal Air Force. And she's talking about, she happened to speak fluent German. She had relatives in Germany and she'd spent a lot of time in Germany. So she's on the radio, she gets on the German frequency and she's giving these confusing instructions to the German pilots that are overhead looking for her, trying to kill her, trying to bomb her airfield. And she was talking this like one particular story, and the German air traffic controller ladies are like, don't listen to her. She's not one of us. And don't listen to her. She's not. And she talking about this one story about luring this pilot right over some British anti-aircraft guns, and they got him. That was one case where she knew she had lured a German pilot to his death, and he was trying to kill her. And she was smiling the whole time she was telling the story. These are people you don't... The 5 golden rules of criminal investigation. Professor Dad, repeat after me. Rule number 1, cherchez la femme. Look for the woman. You're a barnstormer? Oh, you threw in a real barn. They said that the Spitfire was easy to fly if you were a good pilot. But to them, easy to fly was, they're performance aircraft. They are not cabin cruisers. I never realized, you watch these movies, and to get everything in so the camera can see it, the pilot's got a lot of room. It's like, you got more room than I got in here. You ever see the cockpit of a ME-109? The canopy is right here and actually goes around the shoulders of the pilot. He is Spam in a can. How would you like to be Paul Newman? You're sitting in the back of the station wagon facing out. Hope you don't get motion sickness. You have no control over the plane. You can tell the pilot, turn left, turn right. You're back there with the gun, defending yourself as best you can against a killing machine. He was in the Pacific. You don't even know if the guy's going to ram you. You sat there for a couple of hours. Well, I guess a lot of times it wasn't that long, but those guys. I think that's it for tonight. Thank you guys so much. 0 drop frames. Yeah, right. You don't, it's not like the movies. It's not like the movies. And you can't fill up the tank because it makes the plane, when you're interceptor, you got to get up there as fast as you can. The way they explained it in the Battle of Britain, the reason the radar was so crucial was you've got a bomber flying at, let's say the bomber's flying at 175 knots. You've got a fighter plane that can fly at 195 knots. That's a difference of 20 knots. Well, that's 22 miles per hour. Okay? If you're 60 seconds late getting up, you're 22 miles behind the bomber. It'll take you an hour to catch up, and he'll be home by then. It was a question of timing. They didn't take off too soon. They'd run out of gas. They didn't take off too late. And really, he said it was impossible to take off too soon. They were running to their airplanes, jumping in their airplanes, which the crew has been swarming over, and they would do this. Battle of Britain, those guys were getting up before dawn, flying combat sorties, 10, 12 a day. Up, down, just flying an airplane that has no hydraulic assist, flying that airplane all day and all day long. They said there were cases pilots would land and they would run out to get him out of the plane, and he would be asleep. He fell asleep landing his plane. That's how they did this every day. Not once. They did it every day. For a while, they were doing it every day. Yeah, if you're 1 minute late, you're an hour late. It's crazy. And you got to climb to that altitude. It's crazy. Okay. Never agree to help pilots. I will make a note of that. Sticky marks. I'm going to let you have the last word on that. Thank you all so much. Good night. God bless. Please spay and neuter your cannibals. And please stay plugged in to the Stones Unturned podcast, which I'm not. Hold on. It's here somewhere. I'm Professor Thomas Henry Horan, asking you to please stay plugged in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
He